This is a series on man's symbiosis with technology, past, present, and future. In our last episode, we explored the imminent changes that the advent of artificial intelligence will have on our labor force, as well as the economic and societal ramifications of these technologies. But for all intents and purposes, we are still in the very early days of AI. These early incarnations are mostly capable of repetitive, uniform functions and have nowhere near the intellectual capacity of a human being. Even the greatest AI of today are light years away from where we are headed. It appears now that it is no longer a question of if, but rather when. In 1997, a supercomputer named Deep Blue beat world chess champion Garry Kasparov. For the first time ever, artificial intelligence had outsmarted a human being. But this computer was only really good at a particular task: playing chess. At that time, computing power was nowhere near equivalent to that of a human brain. But technology has advanced by leaps and bounds in the past 20 years, with breakthroughs in artificial intelligence like Bina 48, IBM's Watson, who beat 2 Jeopardy champions on live television, and finally, Google's AlphaGo, who beat legendary Go player Lee Sedol at this strategic and complex game years ahead of previous predictions. For better or worse, technology is progressing at an exponential rate. Seeing how far technology has come since the early days of computing a few short decades ago, how long will it be before machines have consciousness? How long before they have true sentience? Well, it depends on who you ask. There are basically 2 schools of thought when it comes to developing advanced artificial intelligence. The first camp believes that the best means of creating a superintelligence is to mimic natural biology. This means either synthesizing things like neurochemicals and hormones or simulating them in an artificial substrate such as virtual reality or a robot. But despite recent advancements like gene editing or even having mapped the human genome in its entirety, we still do not sufficiently understand our own neurochemistry enough to replace it, meaning it will be many, many years before this version of smart AI is developed. Take, for instance, research performed in 2014 with the K computer, the world's 4th most powerful supercomputer. With its 700,000 processor cores and over 1 million gigabytes of RAM, this computer system was tasked with simulating just 1 second of human brain activity. It took it over 40 minutes to process. But it seems very likely here that the main flaw of this experiment was their attempt at simulating human brain activity. Beyond our own thoughts, the brain is responsible for numerous functions, including autonomic responses like blinking, breathing, regulating digestion, and heartbeat, as well as various other biological processes. These computations, although necessary for biological organisms, are irrelevant to machines. Cutting them out of the equation, in fact, forgoing neuronal simulation altogether, could lead instead to the processing of information in a precise and efficient manner that, at our current trajectory, would exceed that of humankind within a short while. This would be achieved without consideration of human biology, itself irrelevant to intelligence. Different engineers will likely choose sides as to which path artificial intelligence will ultimately take, but either way, we are almost there. Intel had previously stated that, by 2018, they will have a computer capable of exascale computing. Exascale computers can carry on a quintillion floating point operations per second, about the same power as the human brain, leading to real-time simulation of brain activity, or, if the latter course is taken, the ability to, in some sense, exceed it. Especially when technology like machine learning inevitably gets better. It should be noted, though, that this milestone does not necessitate consciousness. Some modern philosophers believe that artificial intelligence is incapable of true consciousness, designating that function not to our brain, but instead to our spirit. I would argue that, although this may technically be true, it is also essentially irrelevant. If artificial superintelligence is capable of behaving as though it were a sentient being, even if only by design, the ramifications are the same. If anything changes at this point, it is the ethics of artificial intelligence, a full conversation in and of itself. But because consciousness isn't inherently tied to the human form, we can, in principle, create beings in any form we can imagine. So what happens when the intelligence that we have created exceeds our own? Because of their heightened intellectual capacity and opposable thumbs, Homo sapiens sapien, literally the one who knows that he knows, have climbed not only to the top of the food chain, but have basically come to a place where they are capable of omitting themselves from it, becoming the most prominent, widespread species the world has ever seen. But nowhere is it written in stone that this is the way things will always be. The degree of progress that humanity has made since we climbed down out of the trees has been slow and linear, but as we have seen, unlike human beings, the rate of technological progress since the digital age is exponential. In his Law of Accelerating Returns, inventor and futurist Ray Kurzweil famously stated that humanity will make 20,000 years of technological progress within the 21st century. While this may seem far-fetched to some, it would not be unreasonable to apply this principle to the intelligence of machines. With processing power nearly doubling every year, machine intelligence will soon eclipse human intelligence. These machines will become self-replicating, their code self-correcting, developing new and better versions of themselves until we live in a world that we couldn't even imagine in our wildest dreams. Explaining these technologies to humans will be like explaining the internet to an ant. So what place will human beings have in that kind of world? Some theorists believe that our hyper-intelligent robot overlords will feel pity for us and, thankful for having been instrumental in their creation, will treat us essentially like pets. Others, however, feel that we will meet a much more dismal fate. Take, for instance, Elon Musk's musings on the subject.
If there's a superintelligent, particularly if it's engaged in recursive self-improvement, if there's some digital superintelligence and its optimization or utility function is something that's detrimental to humanity, then it will have a very bad effect. It could be just something like getting rid of spam email or something, and it's like concludes, well, the best way to get rid of spam is to get rid of humans.
This may sound like cold and ruthless logic to you, but that is because you experience human compassion. AI, on the other hand, will only behave in a manner that doesn't result in mass genocide if we design it that way. That is why some of the greatest minds of our time, like Elon Musk, Isaac Asimov, and Stephen Hawking, caution that we must put every safeguard in place to prevent such an event from occurring. Google, too, has addressed this concern with its recent 5 Rules of AI Safety. But what if someone doesn't adhere to such guidelines? Even if virtually all AI developers take these precautionary measures to ensure the salvation of the human race, history has certainly had its fair share of Hitlers, of Pol Pots, of Stalins. What if such an individual gets a hold of this superintelligence first, using it for world domination? Even the announcement that such a technology had been developed could lead to hostility towards whatever nation was responsible for its creation. As what we are talking about here is basically omnipotent, basically an electronic god, we need to, as a species, address this possibility before it occurs, not scramble for treaties and resolutions after the event takes place. Already the United States utilizes drone warfare and is developing autonomous weaponry. Could we be developing the dystopian world of Terminator? As H.G. Wells once put it, history is a race between education and catastrophe. But even if we don't bring upon our own demise, we will still be living in a world in which we are no longer the most intelligent being. A world that is designed by and for the artificial intelligence who will come to hold dominion over it. A world that was not designed for us. Looking at the rudimentary AI available today, there is no doubt that within a century's time, we will have full-fledged artificial intelligence, the likes of which will be so advanced as to overcome human beings as the dominant species on the planet. So where will that leave humanity? Some believe that if the proper safeguards are put in place now, These super-intelligent machines will live to serve humans, building a sort of human paradise. But intelligence inherently yields decision-making, and where there are decisions, there is almost certainly the free will to make those decisions. As a result, if these robots instead decide to build their own paradise, human beings will live in the mechanized world of a science fiction dystopia, so far advanced as to be inconceivable to our simple brains, incapable of being processed by our 5 basic senses. But another technology is being developed in parallel with artificial intelligence, one that many see as our saving grace. That technology is virtual reality. In 2016, affordable, convincing VR began to hit the market. Soon, combined with motion tracking, ever-increasing video quality, hard drive capacity, and processing power, it will allow for the creation of virtual worlds, even universes that are indistinguishable from our own for all intents and purposes. This type of technology may sound like it's hundreds and hundreds of years away, but when Moore's law is taken into account, it's much more likely that something to this effect could be created within the next 20 or 30 years. Open-world video games lend credence to this theory, as does the advent of games with full-scale universes like No Man's Sky, which essentially uses what equates to algorithmic metaphysics to allow for the expansion of their universe in a way sort of like our own. It's these kinds of things that lead people to believe that we may already be living in a virtual reality. This simulated universe hypothesis proposes that our universe is but an artificial universe designed by some future version of humanity. Admittedly, at first glance, this seems far-fetched, but tell me, how far-fetched is it really? Theoretical physicist James Gates recently made a staggering discovery while exploring the mathematics of string theory, the present scientific theory of how the laws of the universe work.
It's not just sort of resembles computer code, you're saying it is computer code.
It's not even just is computer code, it's a special kind of computer code that was invented by a scientist named Claude Shannon in the 1940s. That's what we find very, very deeply inside the equations that occur in string theory and in general in systems that we can say are supersymmetric.
The fact that other code has not yet been found embedded within may simply be an indication that much of the code needed to run the simulation hasn't been discovered yet as of 2016. If the mathematics is an indication that we're living in a simulation, that means our frame of reference in relationship to time, too, is merely a simulation. This means that 20 centuries of our time could take place within a matter of seconds in the higher reality. Within a matter of minutes, the simulation could go from, let's say, the Cretaceous period to the time when the simulation is invented, powered on, and history repeated in a microprocessor ad infinitum. Bear in mind that even if this reality is the true reality, it's only a matter of time before these types of complex virtual realities, from the microcosm to the macrocosm, come into existence. Could they serve as a last-ditch attempt at self-preservation of the human species, coinciding with the rise of our robot overlords? Or will humanity prevail, instead utilizing these new virtual realities as different realms of consciousness to explore, as shamanic cultures have done with plants for centuries, living in harmony with the superintelligence around us, building our ever-evolving world? The caterpillar and the butterfly.